here it is. Really big four-wheel horsepower from Case. The 2870. 300 engine horsepower. 250 PTO horsepower. All at only 2,200 RPM. A truly mean machine. We not only designed big power, but we did it with you, the service technicians, in mind. Look at this tilting hood. Snap-off side panels, all designed to let you get at things easier. We didn't stop at the hood either. Look at the cab. The blower assembly has been moved to the rear of the cab. This not only makes the blowers easier to get at, but the windshield wiper motor up front is also easier to work on. Look at this new instrument panel. All circuit boards for greater reliability. And plug-ins too for easier removal, just in case. In the plenum, we have made radio installation easier. No more holes to drill to install the radio. Just remove a plate and slide it in and hook up the wires. The speakers are built in and standard in all cabs, including the wiring. On tractors built after January 1977, there won't even be a need for an antenna. The cab filter box will be the antenna, with the antenna wire already installed. Let's continue our tour of the tractor, starting at the radiator. The radiator is designed to handle this horsepower. Just look at the size of it. 44-quart capacity. Next, the engine. 674 cubic inches with a 5-inch bore and 5.7-inch stroke. A lugging fool. Service information on the engine is covered in a special program devoted entirely to just the engine. We've even designed serviceability into the engine and radiator removal. They can be removed as a unit if it becomes necessary to work on the power shift. Now that we've worked our way down to the power shift, let's take a look at some of the changes. We will point out the areas that will most affect your service procedures. We'll start with the rear bearing, which is larger, as you can see when compared to the 2670. The drive gear is also larger to handle this big horsepower and is helical cut for quietness. Look at the size of the oil distributor carrier. There are several reasons for this. First is support. The bearing in the 2870 carrier is a double-row ball bearing compared to the single row used in the other four-wheel drive power shifts. Second, C2 and C3 clutches have separate lube circuits. This ensures a full flow of lube oil to the engaged clutch, regardless of the mode of the other clutch. A must with the loads this tractor can pull. Let's look at the ring gear and C2 and C3 clutches. You can see the 2870 ring gear is larger. This is because there are naturally more clutch plates required on this bigger tractor. We didn't make the C2 and C3 piston carrier any bigger, but we did spline the inner bore of the piston carrier so it could more efficiently transmit all the power to the output shaft. In the planetary, the 2870 gears are wider, and so are some bearings. Even the planetary retainer and bolts are larger in the 2870. More clutch plates have been added to the C4 clutch. Now we're down to the really big change in the power shift. C1. It starts with the sun gear. You will notice we've inverted the steel and sintered plates. On the 2870, we have made the steel plate the rotating member rather than the sintered plate, as on our other power shifts. The reason for this is we can harden the steel to make it stronger. We can also balance steel plates better than sintered iron. The C1 plates are heavier in the center. This provides longer splines for increased area of engagement with the Sun gear. C1 also has more plates. When you're trying to harness this kind of horsepower, you need all the help you can get. Well, that's how they stack up. Bigger horsepower demands a bigger power shift. This is the Case way. Now let's look at the 4-speed transmission. Even the Case is different. We had to change it because everything inside is larger. Here's what we mean. This is an example of how we have increased the size of the gears as compared to the 2670. There is a bronze thrust washer between each gear on the intermediate shaft, which will ensure long life on the face of the gear hubs. The intermediate servicing procedure will be somewhat different because of the tapered roller bearings used at the ends of the shafts. These bearings will naturally require a preloading. Refer to your service manual for the exact procedure. The output shaft has also been increased in size, and the shaft has tapered roller bearings at each end. These bearings will also require preloading, as described in your service manual. This brings us down to the tractor brake. The brake is still located on the output shaft, as it was on the 2470 and 2670. The difference is that on the 2870, we're using a dry double-disc self-adjusting brake, the same reliable, easy-to-service type you've been used to on our two-wheel drive tractors. We have talked about 300 engine horsepower and a supersized transmission. All this is to no avail if we can't transmit this power to the wheels. Well, look what we've done here. 8 C-joints. Some size when compared to the 7C used on the 2670. I don't think you can doubt the ability of these 8 C-joints to handle this power. What have we done to the planetaries? As you can see by the spindle, we have really heavied things up. In fact, there's one assembly precaution that must be observed because the spindle casting is heavier, and that is that the large relief on the back of the casting must be aligned with the kingpin area of the trunnion. If you don't line this relief area up properly, the spindle will bind on the casting. On the front spindles, the eyebrow relief eliminates interference between the U-joint and the casting when the wheel is fully turned. We've now covered the major differences in the drive line. Let's take a look at the hydraulic system. The capacity of the triple pump is 44 gallons per minute. The oil flow to the hydraulic remote valves and hitch system is 17 gallons per minute from the intermediate pump section. But we have a new wrinkle on the 2870. We are adding to this 17 gallons per minute 5 more gallons from the third pump section. This makes 22 gallons per minute available to the tractor hydraulic system. This ought to help wrestle those big implements out at the headlands. There are some differences in the steering hydraulics on the 2870. We have added a constant ratio flow divider to the steering system. This flow divider splits up the oil from the triple pump. 70% goes to the front steering and 30% goes to the rear. The flow divider is a simple piston-type valve with fixed orifices that always send 70% flow to the front and 30% to the rear. A feature that gives smoothness and reduced effort to the rear steering at all engine RPMs. A unique feature of this valve is that it always provides flow to the front wheel steering system. Here's how it works. Should the rear wheels be against relief, the increased pressure from the rear steering circuit moves the piston and closes off the lands to the front steering. But the oil can continue to flow through the fixed orifice between the lands to supply the front steering. After you try it, you will have to agree that steering on the 2870 is really positive and smooth. The PTO on the 2870 is different too. First, we have designed the clutch to work like the 1570 with a hydraulic-on spring-release brake. Second, in addition to the brake, you're going to need this 1 3/4 diameter PTO shaft to handle these big PTO loads. We have covered most of the new features in some detail, but naturally we didn't get them all. So, to make sure nobody is disappointed, here is a quick look at the rest of the goodies. Headlights in the grille. A door-operated dome light. Look at the size of this tie rod. $150-gallon fuel tank capacity. Larger cab. We think we have it all together to make a leader in big power four-wheel drives. The 2870.